Hello dear students, welcome back. Today in this session we are going to start a new lesson from the supplementary reader Snapshots, the third chapter, Ranga's Marriage, written by Masti Venkatesh Iyengar. Now there are four major characters in the story and let's look briefly about them. The first one is Ranga. Ranga is a boy who used to stay in a small village called Hosahali, which is a part of Mysore district in Karnataka. The second one is Ratna. Ranga finally got married to Ratna in the story, and Ratna is an 11 years old girl and she is Rama Rao's niece. Now Rama Rao is one of the inhabitant or citizens of the village called Hosahali. The third one is called Syama, and Syama is the narrator and the main protagonist of the story, and he is the one who narrates the entire story. And now there are two Syama in the story. The first one is Syama, the narrator, and the second one is Syama, who turns out to be the sons of Ranga and Ratna. He is a 3-year-old boy. The other important character of the story is Sastri, and he is the priest of the village Hosahali, and also he is the one who had helped the narrator Sama in uniting Ranga and Ratna. English language and English way of life have had a deep impact on Indians and their way of life over the years. The story Ranga's Marriage was set in pre-independence days, and it deals with the intrusion of English language and culture into a small village where people are steeped in their age-old culture and civilization. City educated people like Ranga bring in the foreign influences in the countryside or in the small village. The story writer or the narrator is, however, able to show that these influences are only skin deep. Ranga, who claims to remain unmarried if he does not find a mature girl of his liking, falls in love at the first sight with a girl who is just 11 years old and whom he hardly knows. About the author, Masti Venkatesh Iyengar was born in 6 June 1891 and died on 6 June 1986. He was a well-known writer in Kannada language. He was the fourth person among Kannada writers to be honored with the Snapshots Award, the highest literary award conferred in India. He was popularly referred to as Masti Kannada Asti, which means Masti Kannada's treasure. Now let's listen to the explanations of the story. The lesson or the chapter Ranga's Marriage revolves around the character Ranga, who was the village accountant's son, who got the opportunity to go out of the village to study. He had just come back from the city Bangalore after his studies, and at the news of his arrival, the villagers gathered at his home to analyze if he had changed or not, whether Ranga had changed or not, and what is his perception about marriage. Everyone was so excited because during those days, not everyone used to get a chance or an opportunity to go out to the cities for studying. Here, the narrator expects the readers to be questioning about the simplicity of the title Ranga's Marriage. He feels, or the narrator feels, that the readers might be thinking of fancier titles like Ranganatha Vivaha, Ranganatha Vijaya, or Girija Kalyana. The narrator clarifies that although he had an options of keeping such elaborate names or fancy titles, he says that these or the story is not about Jagannatha's victory, or Girija's wedding. The narrator gave the reason why he chose the basic and casual title or a simple title is because the story is about our Ranga. Here the narrator mentioned our Ranga's marriage, which means Ranga was very close and dear to the narrator. The narrator also said that they lived in a village called Hossahalli in the district of Mysore in Karnataka. He also mentioned that not many people know of the village Hossahalli, and the narrator does not blame them because there is no trace of the village in the geography books. And even the sahibs in England or the Englishmen have no idea about the place or the village, but they are also not to be blamed because our citizens too, or even our people, are completely ignorant about his village. So the narrator or refers to the people as sheep who blindly follow each other and do not use their logic or brain to justify or even think. At last, the narrator feels that the cartographer is also not to be blamed or to be held responsible, and as a result, there is no trace of their village or the village called Hossahalli on the map. As the narrator says that there is not even the shadow or any trace of their own village on any map, he feels apologetic or sorry for getting carried away and deviating from the topic. The narrator then again throws light upon the significance of the village of Sahali, and he says that it is just as important as Mysore is to India or Bharat Versa, and Karigadabu to a festive meal, and filling is to Karigadabu. Thus, the narrator can't highlight its importance anymore. He says that it is not only him, but a doctor named Gunda Bhatra, he feels the same. The doctor Gunda Bhatta has been to many places except England, but he still loves Osahali. However, the narrator says that an outsider might contest this, but the narrator, he himself, claims to stick to his opinion of the place. The narrator then tells the readers about their special mango trees in the village Hosahali, whose mangoes are famous for their special quality. The narrator once took the fruit or the mango at home to make a chutney, and everyone suffered from a bad cough after eating it. He also said that it was only when he went to see the doctor that the doctor told him or the narrator about the quality of the mangoes of Hosahali. The narrator asks the readers to take a bite and assures that, or he assures that, the soreness of the mango will be felt by them or by the people who ate the mango till the top of their head, where Brahmaranda is located. The narrator then says not only the mangoes but everything in and around the village Hosahali is special and remarkable. The creeper growing in the pond and its flowers are also special. The narrator also said that one can even serve an afternoon meal on its leaves or the creeper's leaves. All you need to do is to grab 2 leaves when you are on your way to the pond to bath. After speaking highly of his village, or the narrator says, but enough of speaking highly of his village, the narrator says that if anyone wishes to see for himself or herself, one must contact him. If anyone is interested seeing the village of Sahali, anyone can contact the narrator. He says that he will help them to reach there. Also, the narrator feels that there is no better way to know a place than to visit it. Now, the narrator brings about a comparison as to how things were different 10 years ago when not many people knew or spoke English. The narrator says not many people knew English or spoke English during those times, and neither did people send their children to big cities like Bangalore to study. During those times, or back then, in the village of Sahali, it was only the village accountant who had the courage to send his son to Bangalore for higher studies. According to the author or the narrator, those times were simpler, and he justifies his claim or statement by telling an incident where he was at Rama Rao's house and they had just bought a bundle of firewood from an old lady. Rama or Rama Rao's son came to pay the old lady and he told her to come the next morning as he did not have any change at the moment. The poor old lady did not know what change meant and she went away whispering to herself with confusion. Neither did the narrator know its meaning, or the meaning of change was not known to the narrator himself. It was only when the narrator went to Ranga's house that Ranga told the narrator about the meaning of changed. However, 10 years ago, English was not commonly spoken in this village, Hosahali, and when the villagers came to know that Ranga, the accountant's son, was coming home from Bangalore, everyone got excited and rushed to his home to have a glance at him or to have a look at him. Fascinated by all the crowd, the narrator also went there and asked people as to why they were gathered because he couldn't see anything entertaining happening there like a monkey performing. And a boy without brains shouted loud enough for everyone to hear and in a rude way, so the narrator called him immature. Now all the people were waiting outside Ranga's house because the place would look like the black hole of Calcutta if they all went inside. By saying this, the narrator means that there were so many people that the house would have fallen short to accommodate them all. Thus, Ranga came outside with a smile on his face, and everyone was so amazed to see that Ranga had not changed a bit after he left 6 months ago. An old lady even went to the extent of running her hands through his chest to check for a sacred thread. However, she went away after confirming that he had not forgotten about his caste. Now, once the villagers realized that Ranga did not change even after moving to the city, they disappeared as fast as a lump of sugar dust in a child's mouth. The narrator waited till the crowd cleared and asked Ranga about his well-being, and as Ranga noticed the narrator and replied with full respect in a traditional way. Ranga had not noticed the narrator in the crowd before that moment. The narrator says that Ranga was very well behaved and well aware as to who could benefit him. He was one of those who could analyze someone's word rightful. For how he greeted the narrator, he bent low and touched his feet, thereby seeking his blessings. It was not the present day namaskar where children would do it casually. It was a proper traditional one. The narrator blessed him that he might get married soon, and then he left. The author continued saying, that afternoon Ranga visited the author with a few oranges, which the author thought was quite thoughtful of him. Thinking how nice Ranga is, the author thought it would be a good deed to have him married to a girl just as nice as him. Then they chatted for a while, and then the narrator asked Ranga about his views on getting married. Then Ranga expresses that he doesn't intend on marrying now because he intends on finding the right girl. And then he cites that the example of an officer who got married at the age of 30 to a woman aged 25. Now, since these are both adults, they would understand each other's actions and behavior. Whereas, suppose the narrator finds a girl who is very young, she could misunderstand his words or actions because she is not matured enough. He even mentions the love story of Sakuntala and Dushyanta from Mahabharata, and that he would not have fallen in love with Sakuntala if she were too young. In that case, Kalidas' play also would have not existed. That is why he intends, or Ranga intends, on staying a bachelor till he finds the right girl. The narrator also asks, was there any other reason for not marrying now? So Ranga, in reply, he said, a man should marry a girl he loves or he admires, but what they have during those times was arranged marriage. Here the narrator and Ranga is in exchange of words talking one another, and Ranga explaining how and why he is not willing to marry now, and on the other hand the narrator explaining how can one admire a girl which is against of the society and the traditions, and that's exactly Ranga is talking about. The narrator was distressed because he thought that Ranga would become a good husband, but on the contrary to that, Ranga had decided to remain a bachelor. After chatting or talking for a little longer, Ranga left, but the narrator made up his mind that he would get him married, or he would get Ranga married to Rama Rao's niece, a pretty girl of 11 years old who had come to stay with him. Here the narrator introduces us to a new character in the story, and the name of the character is Ratna. She is 11 years old and is Rama Rao's niece. She had lost both her parents, so her uncle brought her from the big town to his home with him. She had a great voice and could play harmonium and veena. The narrator thought that Ranga and Ratna would make a great pair. Now, Ratna was quite familiar with the narrator as he visited Rama Rao's place frequently. Then the narrator thought of a plan to introduce Ratna to Ranga. So he asked Rama Rao to send Ratna to his place as he wanted to send some buttermilk for them. She came, or Ratna came, all dressed up, and the narrator insisted upon her to sing a song, while he sent someone to call Ranga. Just as she was singing, Ranga arrived at the door, and her melancholic voice touched his ears, and thus he did not want to interrupt the singing. So he stood, or Ranga stood at the door. But he was curious to see the singer, and very cautiously he tried to have a look, which disturbed the lighting in the room, and on seeing a stranger, Ratna immediately stopped her singing. Now the narrator compares Ranga's situation to the disappointment of dropping a best quality mango on the floor just before having to truly enjoy it. It was, or the situation was, as if something great had been stolen before one could fully enjoy it. Then Ranga asked the narrator why he had called for him, and on the other hand, Ratna was shy and thus looked downward, whereas Ranga stealthily glanced at her. There was an awkward silence in the room. After things went a bit awkward, Ranga said that he feels it was his coming that stopped the singing, so he must leave. However, he did not. So the narrator makes fun of him because he had no intention of going. So he jokes about it and says one cannot expect actions and words to match in the Kali Yuga. After a few minutes of awkward silence, Ranga finally asked the narrator about the girl. Now the narrator compares the situation again with the infamous story of the he god and the lion, where he is or the narrator is the he god and Ranga the lion. The narrator replies very cleverly and intends on seeing Ranga's interest in knowing about Ratna. Thus, the narrator says that who she is not of that much importance because she is already married and Ranga doesn't intend on marrying anytime soon. On hearing the narrator's reply, Ranga got excited, although he did not show it, but it was quite evident. Full of hope, he asks, or Ranga asks, if she is not married yet, to which the narrator replies that she is, or Ratna was married, probably a year ago. Ranga was disappointed and disheartened hearing the news of Ratna's marriage. It was clearly over his face. Then he went away, or Ranga went away, quoting or taking excuses of some work. Then the narrator, having staged certain linking in the mind of Ranga for Ratna, he went on to complete his play. The next day, the narrator went to the village sastri and told him everything that he had to say and he had to do, or he told him everything that had to be said and done. Then he met Ranga that afternoon and he carried the same disappointment on his face. Upon asking if it's a headache, the narrator tells him that they should go and see a doctor. Ranga insists that everything is fine with him and he is in his normal self, but the narrator very wittily makes a remark that he went through the same feelings when he was seeing girls for himself and immediately mentions that it could be the reason for Ranga. Furthermore, the narrator suggested that they should go and see Sastri to see if the stars are in their favor. Ranga went with him or went with the narrator, and on seeing Sastriji, he implied not having seen the narrator in a long while, which is obviously not true as they had met before the same morning. Here, the narrator reveals his pet name, Shyama, as they call him in the village. The narrator felt that Sastri was lying because they saw each other that morning, and thus he immediately responded. However, Sastri completed his sentence and saved the entire situation. Shyama realized what he was just about to do and took extra care from that moment. Sastri continued his role and acted surprised on seeing Ranga. By now, the narrator asks Sastri to take out all his tools to help solve whatever is going on in Ranga's mind with full authority. Now Sastri took out his essentials and told them that this is an ancient science, but he won't recite it now because they both would get bored, but he does not intend on telling it some other time. Now Sastri moved his lips while counting quickly and asked Ranga about his star, which Ranga did not know. But Sastri implied that it's manageable. Then he appeared to be doing some certain calculations, and after a moment he indicated or Sastri indicated that Ranga has a girl on his mind. Even after trying his best, Shyama could not control his laughter. He thus posed the question to Sastri, asking about the details of the girl. Now Sastri thought and replied that the girl is likely to have a name of something found in the ocean. Their guesses include Kamala, Panchi, Moss, Pearl, and then suddenly Sastri said Ratna. All of it came together now to a girl named Ratna, who is the niece of Ramarao. That's it. Ranga was thinking about her only. Ranga was both surprised and happy because Sastri's predictions were right. He immediately became disappointed when he recalled that she was married. Sastri again said that he did not know all that names of the girl and there might be another suitable girl. To make it look real, Sastri interfered in their name guessing game and told them that he only told what can be read. Both of them, both the narrator and Ranga, left and crossed Ramarao's door, where Syama went to see, or where the narrator went to see Ratna for a minute and came back. When the narrator comes back, he announces that fortunately Ratna is not married, and someone might have wrongly informed or conveyed it to the narrator. Then the narrator expresses his amazement at the fact that Ranga has been thinking about Ratna, and he asked him, or the narrator asked Ranga, to swear upon the truth, or Mahadevacharya. And to his surprise, Ranga told him the truth, that whatever Sastri said is true, and then his belief in all the Shastras had strengthened. Syama, the narrator, went to see Sastri that evening when he was near the well and remarked about how well he did what Syama told him to do. Sastri seemed to not like what the narrator was saying. Thus, he says that whatever he said could very clearly be seen in the Shastras. He completely disagreed with having staged the entire conversation. Now, the narrator takes us, or the readers, a few years forward, where Ranga and Ratna are happily married. And they had a 3-year-old son, and Ratna was 8 months pregnant. And Ranga's sister had come over to help them. It was the occasion of Syama's birthday. The interesting thing is that both Ranga and Ratna, both the couple named their son after the narrator, as it is a common foreign tradition to name a child after someone you truly admired. And now, when the narrator went to the house of Ranga for dinner, Syama, the little boy, or a 3-year-old boy, came running to the narrator only to show his love by holding his leg. And then the narrator kissed him and gave him a ring. And finally, the narrator writes an ending note to all the readers, hoping that they were not bored. Dear students, we learned from the story Ranga's marriage that tradition has strong roots in Indian mind, and it turns out to be stronger in conflict with modernity. In the story, we find that Ranga, a city-educated youth, declares that he will not marry until he is physically and mentally matured. And also he announces that he will marry only a matured girl whom he can admire. He also says he has no belief in arranged marriages. But the narrator accepts the challenge of proving him wrong, and when the narrator finds Ranga's interest in 11-year-old Ratna, the narrator works on a calculated plan, and then he succeeds in arousing Ranga's desire for the girl. With the help of the village astrologer or Sastri, he finally pins down Ranga's unwillingness to marry prematurely. And when Ranga and Ratna get married, he or the narrator feels happy and satisfied. Ranga does not know how the traditional thinking overpowers and his so called modernity gets defeated. So, dear students, that's all for today's lesson. Hope you understood. Thank you.